So my name is Cashman, and I'm the 17th president of Fairfield College Prep. So excited to welcome you here to Y Prep 2021 and thrilled to welcome 5 of our most amazing seniors in this pandemic year. Wanted to start and have each of the boys introduce themselves by first name and the town from which they hailed when they came to prep. So we'll start with Caleb.
Hi, I'm Caleb Bolden. I'm from New Haven, Connecticut.
Hi, I'm Will, and I'm from Shelton, Connecticut.
Hi, I'm Stephen Wong, and I'm from Stamford, Connecticut.
Hello, I'm Matt Hansen. I'm also from Shelton, Connecticut.
Hi, I'm Billy Weber, and I'm from Milford, Connecticut.
Awesome, guys. So great to be able to spend this time with you at the end of what is maybe one of the most extraordinary senior years in prep history since 1942. And I think I've said to you guys a bunch, I think so much about our prep history when I think of you, because you're going to be in the prep history books in a big way forever, right? I mean, the class of 21, the pandemic class is going to be one of those legendary moments. So I'm thinking about really that sense of sweeping history of Fairfield Prep. We've been forming men for others since 1942, and you're in that long, unbroken chain of men, since our founding. So I thought that might be a good place to start, is just that sense of, what men for others means to you. I know you've done a lot of service, you've been involved in outreach, and maybe it's some other aspect of your life, but if each of you has a moment of what it means for you to truly be a prep man for others, let's just share about that. Anybody who wants to get us started.
I guess I'll go first. I think that the quintessential man for others moment for me was on my Kairos retreat, which is a retreat that you go on your junior year. Basically, on that retreat, I had been going through some stuff personally that I won't get into for the sake of time and just for clarity. And on that retreat, I had a couple of people in my group that I didn't know so well, or I wasn't such great friends with, and I had some people that I was really close friends with. Actually, Billy was in my group for that. And kind of getting to speak out and share my story and what was going on inside, and like having all this emotion built up. And I was like terrified to share it with the group. And even these guys who I wasn't quite great friends with, or maybe even had conflicts with in the past, kind of stood up, and they were there for me in that moment. They came up to me after I shared, and they kind of helped me feel like I was on the path to healing. And I know that that's kind of a specific scenario, but I think that even in the normal classroom environment, you kind of have that opportunity, and you have people who will lift you up and will make sure that you are feeling like happy, and you are feeling healthy, and you're feeling like a true member of the community.
For me, I would say being a man for others is doing things above yourself and being selfless, right? You realize there are people around you. Ignatian spirituality calls us to be a man for others, but what that really means is to give of yourself to other people, not for yourself, right? So you think about service, what we do at Fairfield Prep, we don't do it for ourselves, even though we do get the service hours for it, we need that to graduate, but we do it because it really helps us in our community. So for me, working at my local soup kitchen in New Haven, I found that I was able to really connect with people that I didn't think I'd ever connect with outside of that setting. And also doing tutoring at Fairfield Prep as well, being a man for others, helping my friends and people that I know in the classroom to achieve success is something that's bigger than me. And it's important to help those people around you and really support them.
Kind of going off of Caleb's point about service there, I've had numerous inspirational, really, service moments throughout my time at Prep. And one that comes to mind in particular is the Urban Plunge Immersion trip. In the fall of my junior year, I went with 13 of my fellow Prep brothers of the class of 2021, and we went to inner city Bridgeport to do some service immersion throughout the city. And it was pretty much all service all day, and it was just an incredible experience. We were pretty much called to be men for others the entire time. It was just all service all the time, but it was also a lot of fun. And I think being a man for others is just appreciating the fact that you can do so much for others. And that's really what that trip was about for me, and I got so much out of it, and it's just an incredible experience that I think all prep students should really look forward.
I think for me, it's a big part of being a man for others is seeing that call to action, to that service in the first place. So for my service in my sophomore year at Prep, the first kind of out-of-school thing that I took in order to get my hours done was volunteering at the food pantry at my parish in Milford. And this is something where probably since age 2, 3, 4, ever since I'd been going to church, you see it every time they're there. I'd walk by the table, dropped off donations before and stuff like that. but I'd never gotten involved at all. But finally at prep, I see this opportunity come up. And when I reached out, they were very happy that I volunteered. And I just realized you never kind of realize that that opportunity is there the whole time. All those years I'd been going to Mass and never once kind of jumped for that opportunity to do that. So I was grateful to do that, and I thought that that kind of kickstarts that path to taking that choice to be more of service to others.
That's great.
All right. Yeah. So for me, being a man for others is just beyond helping other people. It's kind of stepping out of your own comfort zone. And I think like a phrase that I learned about last year as a junior was kind of like standing with the marginalized. So the way that I would imagine it is like you have your own small circle, and then there's just that perimeter around your circle, and that's where you should be standing. So it's kind of about stepping out of your comfort zone and helping the people in that area.
You guys are great. Great reflections, and I'm thinking that some of the greatest men and women for others at Prep are your teachers and your mentors, right? I mean, they're the reason you are who you are today, the reason you're so well-versed in Ignatian spirituality, and our mission is really the result of all that they've given you, especially now as seniors. So I wonder if you have maybe an example of how you have specifically, or how you view the importance of the relationship between teacher, mentor, and student at Prep, and maybe there's a moment for you that was kind of that aha moment, or an example. If you could share, that'd be great.
I can start us off with that. So I think it's just, I appreciate the dedication that our teachers have so much to making sure that we understand our material, that we kind of go deeper to find the different values from all of our classes. So one example for me was, again, sophomore year, in physics, we had these quarterly STEM projects that, they're very creative, out-of-the-box sort of thinking things, and if you don't get a head start on them, you usually end up dreading them halfway through. So for one of our later-in-the-year projects, we had to build a musical instrument, and I chose to make a xylophone out of copper piping. So I got all the materials ready at my house, and I was kind of just running with what I got, and I thought that I had all the notes tuned out because it was about sound waves and frequency. So I come into school the next day, and I have some free time before I have to go in for my pre-test in physics. So I go to Mrs. Fragnito's room, and I test it out, and like 6 out of 8 of my pipes were out of tune. So Mrs. Fragnito helped me straighten it out all in the pre-test, and then every day until our actual test, I stayed after school and kept cutting my pipes down in her room, and she was happy to help out every day. I'd just come in, I'd start doing the different sound wave tests, and she was just, for letting me come in and stay after school every day that week, it was just incredibly helpful for that.
Woman for others.
I guess I'll pick up a little bit. For me, I think the first time I really felt the teacher mentorship, or one of the more powerful examples of it at least, is with our current music director, Mr. Hortzman. Basically, freshman year, Mr. Hortzman was in the admissions office, and he and I started a relationship as I was hosting shadow students, so basically allowing someone who's incoming or prospective coming to prep to come and see the school and kind of shadow you for a day and walk around. So I started building a relationship with him there. And then from there, he works at the church in my town, St. Joe's, and he actually got me a job at St. Joe's my freshman year, which most guys don't really start working until their junior year or even sophomore year. But I got a job my freshman year, and it's a job that I've held since then. And since then, our relationship has grown. He's helped me get better at music. I'm part of the select choir and music ministry now, and I have a really great relationship with Mr. Hortzman. He's someone who I know will lift me up if I'm having a bad day, and is someone who like, for some reason always tends to know when something's going on with me. Like, I'll try to put on like the biggest smiling face, and if something's going on, he's able to like point it out and realize that something's going on, and like sit down and be like, hey Will, are you okay? Do you need to take a minute? Like, he's always there to know that. So the fact that I have a teacher that knows me that well, I think is something really powerful that I've gotten.
And for me, adding on to kind of what Will said about, a teacher really knowing you, I could say for me as a junior last year taking honors physics or chemistry, I was walking in and out of Miss Keel's class every day. I was paying attention, I was taking the notes, but there were times when I'd come in, I leave I leave late because I'm a slow walker sometimes. And she said, "Hey, Caleb, how you doing?" And I just said, "I'm doing fine. How are you doing? Have a good day." And I did that every single day that I went to class. And then by like midway through the year, she said, "Caleb, I really see that you understand the material that we're doing in class." And I felt like I kind of understood it, but to see, like, I know you're paying attention, I see you. And so to realize that my teacher not only is teaching me in a whole class with like 20 other students, but to really see me as an individual was really important for me. And for her to say, like, yeah, and I think I might want to write you a college recommendation because I know you very well, just from being in class, right? And I'm not going to say, like, I'm the most outgoing person in class, but she still is able to take so much from who I am just by how I interact in the class. And that was something that was really important for me, and it was really impactful to see that a teacher cares that much about my well-being.
I'm going to actually take this moment to embarrass Will a little bit. So Will's dad, Mr. Gualtieri, is our director of campus ministry. And freshman year, early on, I was on the freshman soccer team, and I enjoyed that. But it was really the only extracurricular I was involved in at the time. So one day I was hanging out in the SLC after school, and Mr. Gualtieri walks by and he asked me if I'd like to join campus ministry because he had known we used to belong to the same parish, St. Margaret Mary in Shelton, and he knew that I altar served there. So he asked me if I wanted to join campus ministry. I didn't think much of it, and I said, yeah, sure, I'll join. Why not? But what I didn't realize at that time was just how much that decision would affect me, how much that small yes would affect me. I've been involved with campus ministry all 4 years at Prep now. I've been on like at least 5 retreats now. I've led numerous retreats. And those experiences have been absolutely transformational for me. And Mr. Gualtieri has really been at the heart of it. If you want to talk about someone who embodies Ignatian spirituality, you look right at Mr. Gualtieri and say, he's the guy. And it's just, he's been so inspirational for me. He's been such an important figure in my growth as a man for others and just someone who's growing in this prep tradition, this prep Jesuit tradition, and I'm eternally grateful for him, and I think, yeah, he's just that great. Sorry, Will.
Yeah, well, I think all of us have hit on this point that your teachers at Prep want to build relationships with you, and that's very important to me, especially coming from a school where this wasn't really the case. And a specific example that I can think of is Mr. Reedy, who I met on my sophomore retreat, and he was kind of a bit of a spiritual director for me then and there. And one of the things that we talked about were things that I was passionate about, but like I couldn't find like a way to like get into it. I was a little too shy to do what I liked to do most. And he was just kind of there to influence and just give me that little bit of push that I needed. So now I can do choir and creative writing as I please, and I'm very grateful for the relationship that I built with him.
So I'm thinking grad at grad. You know what the grad at grad is better than anybody. I bet you're actually starting to write your comps in senior theology about the grad at grad, so you probably have this on the brain. But I just thought it might be interesting to hear from you guys, and again, not looking for a graduate level thesis here. You don't have to. This is not an assignment. But is there, at the just to let our audience know, the grad at grad is the sort of model of the graduate at graduation in all Jesuit schools, right? We want you to be open to growth, intellectually competent, religious, loving, and committed to justice. And that's something that you're becoming as a man of Prep. It's something that serves you for the rest of your life. But in your own discernment, in your own experience at Prep, is there one pillar of the grad at grad that for you is kind of the North Star, or that you can really connect with, especially as you're looking back over the 4 years? So what's the pillar of grad at grad that for you kind of is defining in this moment?
I can actually start with this one. So for me, I would definitely say open to growth. As someone who came all the way from New Haven to come to Prep, I had to be open to the new experience of, coming all the way from New Haven to Fairfield. And that's a little bit of a drive if you don't know. And additionally, right, being at a all-boys school was 100% new to me. And also being at a Catholic school was new to me. So I came in with, okay, I'm not necessarily used to this environment, but I'm going to have to grow here. And the experiences that I had while at Prep made me grow into a man as a young man. And I realized that without Prep, I don't know if I'd be the person I am today, right? Being exposed to people who think differently from you is a way to be open to growth. And you are forced to really put yourself in somebody else's shoes. And I don't think I would have been able to have that same experience if I didn't come all the way from New Haven to Fairfield Prep, to meet different people from Shelton, from Milford, from different places like that, and to meet people who think completely different from me. And for growing, that's one of the most important things, to be in a diverse setting. And so I'm definitely thankful that I came to Prep, because I'm definitely more open to growth now.
I can talk about the pillar for me. Definitely is religious, I'd say. I was a pretty faithful person, before Prep. As I said earlier, my family's gone to church ever since I was a little kid. But I've never had an experience before where religion can meet the classroom in any regard, because I went to public schools before Prep. And I think that an academic approach to religion almost helps me understand it better. It makes like a more logical interpretation of something that's very up to interpretation depending on who you are. So that kind of theology addition into the class roster, I think, definitely was helpful. And then leading into retreats as well, you get the people that are in class with you, you get the teachers who are in the classroom with you, but it's not in the classroom. It's literally retreating away from all of that. And just being able to spend that time with people who you're already familiar with. It's not like you're kind of joining maybe a church youth group where you don't know the people in it. You actually are familiar with everyone when you're on a retreat, and you kind of just get to focus on all the spirituality we talk about here, the Ignatian principles, and it just helps you clear your mind, if nothing else, if you have nothing else going in. So that pillar has expanded my religion, I'd say, definitely coming into Prep.
Going back to Caleb's point, I would also say that open to growth is something that's really been embodied for me. My time at Prep, we were talking about theology senior comps. We just did our interview project where we had to interview 5 different members of our close community, or 5 people that we're close with. And basically, each of them, I wrote one of my own questions, which was, what's one word to describe me when you met me freshman year versus now? And I think just about all of them said that it was like I was unsure of myself, or I was wide-eyed, or I was nervous my freshman year. And then they said that I was sure of myself and confident now. So I think that build in confidence is something that's been really powerful, especially for me. I was a really shy person coming into Prep. Like I definitely agree with that point of one word to describe me when they met me as being shy. Because I was incredibly shy. I had a small group of friends. I wasn't always really talking to people. And I kind of decided at Prep that I wasn't going to do that. And I've gotten involved with all of the arts here. So I've performed on stage, singing and acting. So it's really about that build in confidence. And I think everyone in the community, talking about Man for Others, they lift you up and they kind of help you feel like you're part of this brotherhood even more. And you kind of feel the growth within you, I think. And I think even if it's not the biggest pillar that's embodied for you, I think that everyone gets some of that growth through their time at Prep for sure.
Yeah, I would argue that intellectual competence has been the most foundational pillar for me over my 4 years at Prep. Coming into Prep, I was a straight A student, not to brag, but I would argue that was more based on memory and just basic recitation of pure fact. And over my time at Prep, especially starting at the end of sophomore year, I really developed into this process of learning and understanding why certain things are true and how they're true. Just the overall idea of getting to that point, not just being there, not just saying it. I think that's really helped me with my academics, but also just in general. Like we always say around here, the brotherhood and Men for Others. And these words, they sound nice, and you can just say them, but when you really go into that intellectual competence and you go into why those words are the truth and why those words carry such significant meaning, that's what intellectual competence has allowed me to do. It's allowed me to understand why those words are so special and why we use them so much around here. And that's why this is such a special place.
I think I'll have to agree with the majority with Caleb and Will, that open to growth is more of the pinnacle pillar for me of the grad at grad. To be open to growth is just to basically be open to the new experiences, and prep definitely has a lot of those experiences and opportunities. It's just whether or not you're willing to kind of just put yourself out there and be a part of those things. And there's kind of like two sayings that we have around here that kind of correlate with that. The first being, don't be a 230 kid. And we say this just in reference to just not being the guy that leaves right or directly after school, staying after school for like a club or an activity or a sport. And then this other idea that the more you put in, the more you get out. So it's just basically being there, being present in those activities, and then you'll definitely get something out of it.
Thanks for those reflections. So I'm thinking about back to the fact that you have one of the most remarkable senior years in prep history on so many levels, right? The pandemic being just one of them. I mean, you think about the disruption and challenge in our country since you've become seniors in the last 12 to 18 months. It's sort of unbelievable. Between pandemic and racial challenge, economic challenge, I mean, the list goes on, right? Global issues. It's quite the world that you guys are inheriting as young men of prep. And I'm just wondering, as you're kind of coming down the home stretch of senior year, is there something that you can sort of apply from your prep education already that's helped you address the issues of the last year, that you've experienced, whatever that may be? I know you'll take them as tools forward, but even in this moment, is there a sense that you have a learning, a gift from prep, something that's helped you cope with this incredible senior year you've had?
I can start us off. I'm going to throw out a good Jesuit term right now. The magis. All right, so that's at prep, we like to say that the magis is the more. Not necessarily doing more things, but kind of putting more effort into the things you do, going deeper into your academic classes, into your sports, your extracurriculars, and putting 150% in. I think that in our time with the hybrid format, and even back last year in our junior year when we were completely virtual, it's very easy to kind of lose some of the academic habits that you've developed at prep, because you get yourself into rigorous routines for taking notes and studying and everything during test taking. And when you're sitting at home, as I am in like an armchair with a pillow and a blanket, you sort of get more comfortable where you are because you're at your house. You're never used to doing anything mostly besides homework from home. So you need to use kind of that magis mentality when you're at home to stick to those rigorous study habits, to stay on top of everything so you could still get that value out of your time at home, even though all things considered, we weren't getting the full time here at prep.
Kind of building off of what Billy said, I think that in terms of the more, there was a lot of creative problem solving that went on during the pandemic period, and even still now, we're trying to make adjustments to make sure that this year is as normal as it can be, and that means that we have to think outside of the box for a lot of our extracurriculars. For me, I'm mainly involved in campus ministry and in the arts, so we've had to find some creative solutions around being virtual or being masked up. In the fall, we did virtual improv, so that was over Zoom, which was definitely a jump from doing normal theater like we had been for the last 3 years, but it definitely felt nice to have some sense of normalcy, and I thought that it was a really creative solution that we kind of brainstormed as a group to work around the pandemic and kind of find a way to still do the thing that we loved. And luckily, we're even building into a better position now with vaccines and whatnot. We're able to have some in-person retreats. Matt, Steven, and I are all leading a Kairos this summer, which is going to be really cool. And that'll be in person, even though we're going to have to be masked up. And then we've got our musical happening in the quad in a couple of weeks, actually. And even though we're going to have to be masked up and take precautions, we're finally getting back to that sense of normalcy. And we had to kind of find creative ways around it. We had to do some hybrid retreats. We had to wear masks. We had to social distance. We maybe didn't get to do everything that we wanted to do, but we still managed to find solutions and find ways to make some of these extracurriculars and these experiences still happen, which I think is a really important thing that we got here.
Jesuit ingenuity.
Of course.
Right.
I'm going to take a little bit from both Will and Billy here with my response. I would say that the second Jesuit term that we like to use here at Prep that really applies to this pandemic world we're living in would be cura personalis, the idea of care for the whole person. And that really involves growing both spiritually, mentally, and physically. And I think that was really challenging for many people during this time, and it has continued to be challenging. And I think going back to the fall semester of this senior year, there was a new retreat opportunity that Mr. Gualtieri invented called the Grounded in Gratitude Retreat. And it was just a hectic, very hectic fall semester, especially for us seniors with college applications and classes, tests, and just the pandemic world in general. And the Grounded in Gratitude Retreat is exactly what it says it is. It allowed us to ground ourselves in gratitude. We took a look at the small moments in life, the small details that we can appreciate. There's been so much we can say we've had taken away from us over the past year or so. But when you look with gratitude, you see how much you've been granted, how much you have to be thankful for. And I think that just sets us in the right mindset to continue working, to continue studying for our tests, to continue doing our homework and just giving it 150%, doing the magis, like Billy said. And that idea of cura personalis can help you in so many ways, and it especially helped me and has continued to help me through this pandemic time, and I'm looking forward to seeing what it can do for me in the future as well.
Yeah, kind of adding on to what Matt said, like cura personalis, but I would also say, as we talk about with the pillars of the grad, being loving has been more important than ever this year, right? The decisions we make have obviously a big impact on others, right? So if I'm not loving of other people around me or myself and I'm not wearing my mask, then, I can cause a spread of COVID, and we don't want that at all. And so being loving in a time where people feel disconnected, people feel like their voices aren't being heard, is one of the most important things that I've seen over the last year. And being loving and compassionate for the struggles of other people is just as important as well. And we're taught in like Jesuit education that everybody matters and that all the voices should be heard. And so making sure that we are actually doing that in times when the country can be in chaos, when we're isolated from each other, and really make sure we continue those connections, as Matt said, spiritually and also emotionally with each other. I think that's very important, especially in a year like this one.
My takeaway that I can kind of apply to this pandemic world isn't something that I learned pretty early on. It's actually something that I learned recently in my senior year from social ethics. And one of our big takeaway or main points in the subject this year is the Christian standard. And that consists of two main things: a just community and respecting all human dignity. And I just want to talk about the respecting human dignity part. A lot of that is compassion, and the way we could define compassion in class is two steps. It's recognizing or having empathy to see the needs of others, and then showing a genuine effort to go and help those people.
Amazing, guys. Very moving, and I'm sure that these lessons will continue to evolve for you, especially post the pandemic year. Maybe the singular term of prep life is brotherhood, right? And we use it every day. It's way more than a buzzword. I know you know that. People hear it and they probably can't quite fathom what that really means. It goes all the way back to Ignatius, right? He started with First Companions in a brotherhood, with companions, and we've been living this for 480 years. So it's a pretty amazing thing that we're connected to. But for you, if I say, what does prep brotherhood mean to you? Or how have you experienced prep brotherhood? How would you respond to that?
I would say that the prep brotherhood is just a really strong support network that'll never fail you. It's a group of brothers, of prep men who will always be there to help you through thick and thin, and will always have your back no matter what. And I think I kind of took that for granted my freshman and sophomore years. I kind of just thought about the brotherhood, said, yeah, that's pretty cool, but I never really knew what it truly meant. And I think junior year, in the fall, I went on a Kairos retreat, and it's a very, very powerful experience. And the bonds you form on Kairos are just so incredibly strong. You move beyond the surface, and that's what the brotherhood really is. It's moving beyond the surface. It's going deeper and really connecting with one another. And then those deep connections allow you to be there for one another no matter what. And so the brotherhood is just formed in those deep connections, and it'll never fail you. So that's how I would describe it. But I'm sure there are many similar definitions, but very unique variations as well.
Well, I think just a big difference you can tell when maybe comparing your prep brothers versus an out-of-school group of friends is kind of that depth of connection that Matt talked about between your mutual experiences that you have in common from prep and the lessons that we've learned here that people who don't go wouldn't necessarily know about. Like, you're able to have that fun, rowdy experience as we typically get, at our football games and our pep rallies and things like that. But everyone here is willing to kind of settle down and get in a more mindful state if you need someone to talk to and you're looking for someone to listen to you. When our second period prayer comes over the loudspeaker, you see everyone quiet up, stand up in classroom. So there's kind of this dual aspect. You have that deep connection, but then these are also the friends that you're going to have for such a long time that you're going to remember going to dances with or to the big football game, right, for the championship. So it's kind of just you get to do so many different things with them. How many friends can you say that you've had in a classroom setting but also gone to a pep rally and a football game with and gone on a service trip with? So it's just there's so many different ways to experience that brotherhood that I think makes it so special.
And like kind of going off what Billy said with experiencing the brotherhood in different ways, right? I can say for me as a freshman, when I came on the cross country team, I was a little nervous. But the seniors really did a good job of making me feel welcome. The traditions that we had on the team, they really instilled those values in me and my other younger teammates. And I felt like I was really a part of something that was special. And we were a great team. We were competitive. But it wasn't just special because we were good. It was special because I saw the guys cared about me, about my teammates, about everybody on the team. And so that's just one example. But also, it's not just sports that you experience the brotherhood. You also experience in the classroom, right? As I walk through the hallways with my senior classmates, we reminisce about the different times that we talked about in sophomore English and the different jokes we made and the different experiences that we had together and like the shared experiences that really made our prep experience special. You think about, oh, wow, I remember we read that book and we had all these inside jokes about that. And that's something that you don't necessarily have at every single school, right? And as somebody who's the only child, right, I appreciate the fact that I have people around me that can really take me in all aspects of what I do, whether it's extracurriculars or athletics or even the classroom. And that's a really unique experience about Fairfield Prep.
So I guess for me, the brotherhood really first came out, I would say, the summer of my freshman year, which is kind of a weird time because it's after school's wrapped up and it's after a full year. But I was lucky enough to go on 2 retreats back-to-back my freshman year. So first there was the leadership retreat, and I had not really planned to go on this, and it was kind of a last-minute nomination from a teacher that told me to go on the retreat, and I ended up signing up, and I was like, all right, I'll test this out. Because the following week, this was a shorter one, it was about 2 days. The following week, we had the week-long Notre Dame Vision trip, which is like kind of a big deal. It's a lot. You're away from home for a week. You're in Indiana. You're rooming with someone. You're going to all these different speeches, and you're kind of getting to meet a bunch of new people. And I was still pretty shy at the time, I would say. But going on that leadership retreat, I kind of, for the first time, felt that brotherhood. It was with seniors, juniors, and sophomores, or rising seniors, juniors, and sophomores. And for the first time, I kind of felt that real like sense of community. I was with Billy, actually, was on that retreat. And that was the first time that we really became friends and we really became close. And there's a lot more relationships that were built. And it kind of taught me to find God in my brothers. And I think that that's a really important aspect to the brotherhood, is that you're able to see God in your brothers at prep, which you might not necessarily see as well in those outside of it. Again, going on those retreats and having those more powerful religious and spiritual experiences. And then the following week when I was on Notre Dame Vision, it kind of helped me, the previous week kind of helped me to come out of my shell and kind of decide to take advantage of the experience to the fullest. So it allowed me to go to the extra sessions or meet with some of the priests or go to confession or kind of come out of my shell there and get close with the brothers that came with me on that experience as well. And I kind of carried that, and I try to carry that with me still, kind of carry that jump out of your comfort zone and talk to someone, because for all you know, they could be one of your close brothers. They could be this idea of the brotherhood for you, which I think is really powerful.
For me, the brotherhood is kind of its own system of the upperclassmen, juniors and seniors, acting as older brothers for their younger siblings in a way, the freshmen and sophomores. And together this kind of makes our own little community in prep, but for me it's like kind of a family in a way. I think I kind of have a better appreciation for the brotherhood in a way, because in my household I'm the oldest of 3 siblings, so I never really knew what it was like to be a younger sibling and to have an older brother. So coming to prep was it was a little intimidating at first, but then creating these relationships and having those older brothers really inspired me. And then as I got older and became a junior and now a senior, seeing myself as an older brother and being a mentor for the freshmen.
I'm going to ask Stephen a follow-up question here and kind of embarrass him, because you had a great example of brotherhood actually related to your college search. And I wanted to give you a chance to tell that kind of uncanny prep brotherhood connection story that just probably happens more than we know, but happened to you on your recent visit.
All right. Yeah. So last week I was out in Indiana just to look at Purdue, and kind of like the basis of the story is I don't think my parents really understand the idea that there's a brotherly connection at prep, and even beyond. So prior to this trip, I had a guidance meeting with Mr. Hanrahan, and he had given me a list of guys that graduated last year that are off at Purdue now. So like one of the examples was like John Dooley and Max Fellaini. And while in Indiana, I was out at a restaurant with a guy that's now a senior, and he was just kind of answering some of the questions that I didn't know. And as we were leaving the restaurant, I had noticed in the corner of my eye there was this kid wearing a prep shirt, and my mom was like, "No way, no, there's no way that's a prep kid." And then I saw he was wearing FP shorts. I just saw the logo, so I was just like, "Oh, yep, that's a prep kid." And I went up to them or to their table while they were starting dinner, and it was John Dooley. So that was like a major coincidence, and my mom was just like kind of blown away. But this was also just the first instance. The next day when we went out onto campus, literally like 5 minutes in, we had just crossed the street from the parking lot, and this girl had come up to me. It was Mr. Hutchinson's daughter, who's one of the guidance counselors, and it was just mind-blowing to see those the prep recognition like outside of school and even like hours away in Indiana.
And not even a Jesuit school.
Yeah.
Awesome. You guys have done a phenomenal job as Men for Others this year on our admission shadow days, Saturdays here. You've probably spent as much time as I have at Fairfield Prep. I mean, we get the gold star this year for most hours at Prep. But I was, as you've done that, I'm sure you've had an interesting experience of seeing others who were like you 5 years ago, thinking about coming to Prep as a wide-eyed little 8th grader or freshman. And while I'm sure there are a million things that you could say, could you, if you were asked, what is the one thing that you would share with a prospective 8th grader or his parents about why Prep? Why Prep now? Could you put that in a phrase or two?
I can start. So my brother's actually a freshman this year. So he was kind of looking for some advice coming in. I think he's still figuring things out, as you tend to do your freshman year. Kind of takes you a little while to find your own path. And he was like asking me what I thought that he should do. And I told him that I shouldn't be the definition. And I said that your time here is going to help you figure out what your passions are. And that's what I think prep really does. It helps you nurture your passions. I was a completely different person before I got here, to be quite honest. I had a different path in mind. And throughout my 4 years, through all these connections, through the brotherhood, through my teachers, through the grad pillars, I've kind of allowed myself to open up and be open to my own passions and to finding what makes me, me. So that's kind of what I told him. I told him that, and that's what I'll say to an incoming freshman or to a prospective student, is that You might have an idea of what you think your prep time is going to be like, but most likely things are going to change and you're going to find some new passions and some new ideas, and your prep career could be totally different to what you were saying. And I think that's a really special thing, to kind of go in with this idea and kind of have all your expectations shattered and blown out of the water into a completely different and almost more powerful experience.
Awesome.
I would say why prep, kind of going back to being open to growth, right? You walk in here as a freshman, and obviously, like, you're shorter, you have no facial hair and all that, but you leave prep as someone who has a whole different set of experiences that you couldn't even imagine, right? You get your first English paper back, and you think that 8th grade style of writing is going to be successful at prep, and you're quickly realizing, no, it's not going to be like that, right? But you have the opportunity at prep to grow into somebody that your parents are proud of and that you'll be proud of looking back on and say, wow, I really came from this little freshman as this taller senior, maybe with facial hair, maybe not, but someone who really can look at the world and go into the world as someone with confidence in yourself and your abilities, and knowing that you had the opportunity to do all you could within the prep community and really make it your home and make an impact on it as well.
I think I'd have something directed towards the whole family, but more specifically the parents. I think when we were talking to some of the parents of freshmen incoming next year, I kind of forgot that for them it's a bit of a transition too. It's not just everything on the freshman that's coming in or the transfer student. So I think I'd say to parents, let your sons have the chance to spend the time at here, because we can say be a 2:30 kid all you want, but you also need to make sure that your kid has the opportunity to stay after 2:30. You need to make sure to encourage them to get involved, but also, if they're saying, yeah, I'm staying 2 hours, we're doing a certain club that I'm into today, encourage that. Make sure they have the chance with their schedules, because we've got very busy schedules around here at Prep with everyone being very involved in all the different things we offer. Make sure that you're enabling your son to spend the time here, even if it's maybe getting here a half hour before class starts instead of 10 minutes, so he can talk with guys, or again, staying after school for clubs. If you've been, especially I think in a public school environment, you're going to see a change in the way that your son stays at his school and considers it kind of a home away from home. So be ready for that. It's very exciting.
Yeah, so just like Will, I also have a brother here at Prep, Tim, who's a sophomore, and my youngest brother, Andrew, who's now in 7th grade going into 8th, a Prep hopeful, as we would say. But I remember my mom asking me to give advice to my brother, Tim, about coming to Prep and why he should choose Prep, because there was another school that he was very close to going to. And it's kind of a funny story. So I basically told him, "You're a farmer." And he kind of just looked at me very funny, and he was just like, "What is that supposed to mean?" And it kind of comes from what Mr. Milazzo had told me when I was a freshman. He said, "You are a farmer." And I was, at the same time, very confused by that. And what he basically meant is that Prep is your farm. It's kind of just about blazing your own path through the farm. And just like I said before, it's the more you put in, the more you get out. So the more of yourself you put into Prep, the more Prep is going to give back to you in a way. So that'd be my advice.
I would say that Fairfield College Preparatory School, the official name of our school, undersells it a little bit. I would say, yes, your sons will be prepared for college for sure, but I would also say that they'll be prepared for life after college and wherever that takes them. I think that just with these Jesuit values that we're grounded in here so strongly, I mentioned cura personalis earlier, that care for the whole person, really growing not just as a student, but as a human being. That can be so powerful, not just in college, but as a family member, as a father maybe, as a coworker, a supervisor. And then these ideas of the grad at grad, of being religious, but maybe more so being loving and committed to doing justice and just trying to make the world a better place, and keeping that idea of being a man for others in the back of your head. I think that's something that we all know the world needs more of, and that's what Prep will prepare you most certainly for. So that would be the major selling point for me, I would say.
All right, we've been here at it for a while, so what I want to do is we're going to do rapid fire in a minute, which will be a lot of fun because you're going to hold the mic, I'm going to throw things out, and you're just going to give me one-word answers, okay? But before we get to rapid fire, I want to give you an opportunity as we wrap up here. If there's any quintessential prep moment or quintessential prep story, a defining thing that you wanted to share that you haven't already had a chance to share through some of our reflections, is there any closers that anybody wants to share? No pressure, but if you got that one sort of quintessential prep thing that you want to share, now's your moment.
Yeah, I could start. Going back to like the idea of brotherhood, right? We have amazing sports here at Prep, and I knew that coming in, but I'm not necessarily interested in every single sport. I was not necessarily a big hockey fan, but I soon became a big hockey fan once I came to Prep, right? And when I came to Prep in our freshman year, we ended up making the state championship game, and it was in New Haven at the Whale, the famous Whale. I jumped at the opportunity to go to that game on Saturday, and I brought my best friend, Azan, who's also a senior here, and we got there and we saw the stands, and it was packed with white because we did a whiteout, so we all wore white as our Prep color. It was packed, and when I say packed, I mean overflowing our section into another section, into the other side of the stadium, into Greenwich's section, and that's not something you see every day, and especially for somebody who's never been to a hockey game before, that was something I was just like in awe about, right? And then we ended up winning the game, but as I'm going through the game, I'm hearing the chants, the bomb squad's going crazy, we're banging on the glass, we're rowdy, and it's such a great experience and a great atmosphere to really be with your Prep brothers, cheering for your Prep brothers and watching them succeed. And when I was done with the hockey game, I lost my voice. I had screamed my head off because I was just so happy to be there, win that community, in a group of guys that really are there for each other and so supportive of each other. And I think that story represents what Fairfield Prep is, right? We all go to school together. We share the classroom together. We share extracurriculars. We do different things like this to talk to each other. But through and through, we were going to show up for each other at every game, at every meet, at every event to show love for our brothers. And the brotherhood is defined to me in that moment where we're all cheering, we're losing our voices, people are running back to the train to New Haven, all the way from the Whale, and that to me is what Prep is. It's a community of people that really care about one another.
Awesome story.
I mentioned earlier how Mr. Gualtieri was very foundational for me early on in my Prep career. But another faculty member, even earlier on in my Prep career, was incredibly just powerful for how impactful my Prep experience would be. And that individual would be Mrs. Clark, my freshman English teacher that year. I think it was the second week of school, and it was about 7:30 a.m. School starts around 8:30. I always get to school early. And I was sitting by myself in the SLC. There were maybe 5 other kids down there. And Miss Clark walks downstairs, and she pulls up the chair next to me and sits down. And I was a little surprised. I was, okay. And then she asked me how I'm doing. And she's asking me how all my classes are going. I'm like, okay, yeah, good. Because I know you're doing great in my class. And I was like, I just got a 70 on our summer reading assignment. I don't know how great I'm doing in your class. But it just really set the tone for how much the community cares about one another. Mrs. Clark is just such a caring individual, and I think she's a great representative of what Prep's community is all about, what the brotherhood is all about, but also what the faculty and administration are all about. They really care about us, and the Prep community really just cares about each other. So I'd like to thank Mrs. Clark for that moment that really just kickstarted this great understanding of this caring Prep community that we have.
So I think my quintessential moment, or one of them at least, was a trip that I went on with Prep. Last year I went to the Ignatian Family Teach-In down in Washington, D.C. and Arlington for some of it. So it's basically this huge conference where all the Jesuit schools around the country come with different groups, and it's this huge conference on social justice. There's usually specific themes, but it covers everything from, poverty, hunger, environmental issues, inequality of all kinds, and it's this multiple-day process where you hear all these different speakers, some of whom are these elderly people who have been serving the impoverished for their whole lives, and others are just students, high school and college students, just like us. And it kind of, in one sense, it lets you know that there are other schools that think like us. We're not the sole Jesuit school in this country. So it's really cool to be able to walk. The hotel had this sort of like food court mall underneath, and you walk around and there's people from every other school, but it's like seeing more prep students around from everywhere, all parts of the country. So we got the chance to talk to representatives from some of our federal senators' offices about different justice issues that we wanted to talk about in relation to some legal things they were discussing. But it also was a really fun trip. Matt went on it with me, and it had all the great elements of a trip. We got lost in D.C., in Arlington. We went to the wrong hotel. We got locked out of our hotel room at one point at night. And it was really fun. It was a small group of guys, but again, it was this big, just huge conference with everyone. That was a really great experience for me.
I would say that my quintessential prep moment is more of a collection of moments, I guess I would say. It starts with my freshman year. As I've mentioned a couple of times, open to growth and the way that I've changed throughout my 4 years has been something really powerful to me. And when I was coming into prep, I had no idea what I was going to do. I thought I might do cross country. I thought that I might try out for a bunch of different sports or try for a bunch of different clubs. But that was not the case because on our freshman orientation day, Teddy Whiteman, who is going into his senior year at Notre Dame now, so he's far out, but basically inspired me to march up to B3, which is our arts department, and sign up to do Prep Players, which is our school drama program, and do the school play. The school play at the time was Peter and the Starcatcher, which, unbeknownst to me, had music in it too, which acting and coming out of my shy little bubble was a big step, and then singing on stage was an even bigger step for me. But nonetheless, I signed up, and I went through the first show in my prep career, and I did Peter and the Starcatcher. I played a pirate called Sanchez, whose lines were exclusively, "It's Sanchez, sir," which was said about 3 times throughout the entire show. So not the biggest role, not the most impressive start, I would say. And as time went on, I obviously moved up through Prep Players. I stuck with it, despite kind of being unsure about doing a musical. I stuck with it and kind of continued to grow, and I've done a bunch of different shows now. We're doing our 9th production now, and that's kind of where I want to settle now. I auditioned for this show, which is Little Shop of Horrors, and I wasn't expecting too much going in. There's a lot of talented people in Prep Players, so it's pretty competitive for the lead roles or the bigger roles, so I wasn't really sure what to get or what I was going to get, and it's also a smaller cast. And I was kind of blown away to receive the role of Seymour, which is one of the bigger roles in the show, which isn't necessarily something to brag about, but something that I want to say is like just fundamentally shows the change that I've gone throughout my 4 years, kind of going from this role that had 3 lines that were all the same thing repeated 3 times to now a guy who's saying 20 lines a day or singing a solo every other day in rehearsal, which is a huge jump. And I just think kind of really embodies that growth that you can have if you really allow yourself to be open to these new experiences and these new challenges and step out of your comfort zone through your time here.
My quintessential moment is actually, it's a lot like Will's. It's the moments for me. So last year I was chosen to give a speech by Dr. Andrade to the whole student body. And when I was writing it, the only 2 questions that she had on the sheet were like, where was your start and where are you now? And I remember struggling a little bit, but the moment that I had thought of was like the day I made my first friend at prep. And it's not your traditional story. I didn't really just go down and sit at a table and I was just like, hi, my name's Steven. A lot of the seniors now would probably remember this struggle of having your Apple Pencil cap fall off in the hallway. So basically mine had just fallen and it rolled all the way to the front of the classroom in Mr. Davenport's class freshman year. And the kid who picked it up was Jason Weigel. And we both found out that we were trying out for crew, so we became friends that way. And then thereon from crew, I met this kid, Leo, because me and Leo were the slowest kids when we had to do the mile run before practices. And Leo would also drive me back home / to the train station if I needed a ride. And then in the spring, Leo kind of got me out of crew, and we did Gaelic football together. And now I'm the captain of Gaelic football, so it's been an amazing journey from kind of just dropping an Apple Pencil cap to different experiences and stuff.
Love it. All right, guys, we're going to have some rapid fire here to end and have some fun, some little highlights from your prep experience. So these are kind of either or would you rather, right? So we're going to start with a technical one. iPad or real book?
iPad.
Real book.
iPad.
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 Kairos or plunge?
Kairos.
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 Insta or Snapchat?
Instagram.
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 All right, we're going to have some fun with teachers now. Biggest prep hardo?
Mr. Wallace.
Mrs. Keel.
Wallace.
Mr. Carey.
Mr. Mack.
Best dressed teacher?
Mr. Soda.
Mr. Mack.
Mr. Coffee.
Mr. McKenzie.
Mr. Demby.
Loudest prep teacher?
Mr. Carey.
Mr. Carey.
Mr. Coffee.
Mr. McKenzie.
Mr. McKenzie.
Clearly none of you had Reedy. That guy is out of his mind.
Never had Reedy.
Funniest prep teacher? Funniest prep teacher?
Mr. Milazzo.
Mr. Milazzo.
Mr. Myers.
Mr. Milazzo.
Mr. Milazzo.
Red out, white out?
Whiteout.
Whiteout.
Red out.
Whiteout.
Red out.
Rafferty or the whale?
The Whale.
Rafferty.
The Whale.
The Whale.
The Whale.
Cow or garden?
Garden.
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 All right, and to wrap it up, why do you love prep? One word. Why do you love prep?
People.
Community.
Brotherhood.
Brotherhood.
Faith.